We were speaking to the AA's Leighton Beard because we know that next week we're likely to hear the Energy Department has confirmed that we're in for a petrol price drop. Leighton, before we took that presser live, you were talking to us about the amounts that you're expecting to see. Did I hear you say up to R1.90 for a litre of petrol less?
Yes, you did, Sally, but I was about to temper that by saying that the relief that we received from government in March of a R1.50 cut to the general fuel levy is sadly coming to an end going into August. We saw it was halved in June, halved again in July, and that 75 cents is now coming back again into the mix. So if we talk about a reduction of R1.90, we've obviously got to take 75 cents off of that. Having said that, though, I think any reduction at this stage, and I think a R1.15 reduction to the price of fuel is quite significant and substantial, is to be welcomed. It's not another increase. And I do think it gives some relief to consumers, even though it may not take us back to the figures that we had in January, which were obviously around R5 cheaper than what we have at the moment. But I think it is still good news, and I think it's something to be welcomed.
All right, so we could be in for a decrease of around R1.25 for a litre of petrol, thereabouts. What about diesel? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's the same situation. I think we're looking at around R1.50 a reduction in that. Obviously, take away 75 cents, a reduction of around 75 cents to that. So again, 75 cents on a litre may not sound like a lot, but I think it is significant, and we'll have to see what the trend is going forward, Sally, in terms of reductions long term. It's obviously too early to say now whether this is going to happen again in September. We obviously hope that it does. But the trajectory of international oil prices seems to be coming down. And if that continues, and if the rand can continue strengthening a bit against the US dollar, then the outlook could be quite positive. It all obviously depends on the numbers. But for now, a reduction, I think, is very good news.
Yeah. And am I right that we can't say definitively that we've seen the worst of what's going to happen to the oil price? Because the war in Ukraine rages on. We know that big economies are still battling. I think we're expecting a decision a little later this evening from the US Federal Reserve. They're likely to increase interest rates, I think, by a full 100 basis points. That's what everyone's expecting anyway. So there's a lot of hardship around the world and still a lot of uncertainty. Or do you think that perhaps we are through the worst in terms of the price of crude oil?
Yeah, it's such a difficult question to answer. I think we're seeing supply problems in terms of the grain coming out of Ukraine. That just, I think, highlights the fact that we've got issues in terms of oil supply as well. Are we over the worst? I think we all certainly would hope so. Certainly countries in the global north are facing very similar problems in terms of their fuel prices as we are down in the global south. It's a tough question to answer with 100% certainty. Anything can trigger a rise again, even something small. We've seen some countries have cut output. It's a very tough question to answer, Sally, and I'm certainly not going to put my head on the block and say, yes, we're over the worst. I think one of the things that we would like to see again is that there is some definitive movement from our government in terms of dealing more effectively with the fuel price, to answer exactly that question, because nobody really knows where we're headed, but we need to have things in place that can deal with any eventuality. And as things stand at the moment, I don't think we're there yet.
I mean, on that, we know, you mentioned the tax relief cushion, which is coming to an end at the end of this month. I mean, not badly timed if you see that the crude oil price seems to be stabilizing. But also, government had set itself a target of looking at the petrol price and all the different things that go into making it up, the taxes that boost it up, talking about things like the road accident fund, maybe cutting the contribution there. Also talking about deregulation. Have you seen any solid progress on those other measures that are within the control of the government here to control the price of oil?
Sadly, no. I think the only thing we've seen is this call by government asking for comment on their proposal to cap 93 unleaded fuel. And again, people are saying that that's a move in the direction of deregulation, and there are pros and cons on that argument itself. But I think what we would like to see as the AA is a full open, transparent review of the fuel price, specifically looking at that import parity price in relation to the basic fuel price, and then obviously interrogating each of those elements to determine their validity and necessity to be on that fuel price and whether those calculations are correct. And I think until we've had that process, Sally, there's still going to be many people who question that. So for us, we haven't seen much movement except this issue of 93 and the cap on 93 fuel inland. But I think there's a lot more that's needed in terms of dealing with the fuel price and looking for those things that can mitigate against these rising prices.
Well, I guess we'll take the wins when they come, and we look forward to the drop in the petrol price from next week. Thank you so much. And that, of course, will kick in always on the first Wednesday of the month.